So the first few statements are about experience. There is something stable, constant, and ever present in my experience.
Yes, that is definitely true. And it was very different than before this spiritual shift happened for me in 2012. Before then, I did have all sorts of spiritual experiences that you were talking about, and some very powerful, so powerful that I had to kind of step away from it for a while. But in 2012, there was something very different that happened. I would not even call it an experience, really. I would simply call it a shift in perspective and a backing up into what was deeper and than any experience, but in which all experiences happened. It was seeing from a different place, if you will, but it's it's not a place. It is it's all places. It's seeing it's seeing it, everything's happening, including all experiences within this. And this has continued ever since that summer of 2012. So it's going on 14 years now. It My understanding and my articulation of it has changed over that time, but what this is has not changed because it cannot change because it's not subject to me. It's even though me, as far as this individual self, can perceive it differently and can articulate it differently. Still, this reality, this bigger reality, that's bigger than me, which is my true identity, I would say, remains constant.
Is it more of a knowing, a noetic quality, or more of a feeling, an quality, affective quality?
I think those are can be expressions of it, but that's not what it is. It is a sense of boundlessness and spaciousness and inclusiveness. And that brings with it, it can produce certain emotions and thoughts and feelings and all that stuff. But those are really incidental. Those are simply the effects within my body and personality, rather than characteristics of this, ultimate reality, I would say.
So does that reality have any characteristics?
I would say not. That is, it is defined by what it's not rather than what it is. As soon as you try to say something it is, it instantly falsifies it. It instantly points away from it. As soon as you try to pin it down, it won't. It won't be pinned down. So
Well, I have a few other statements that kind of
yes,
try to circle around what you just spoke about. So the stable and constant aspect of my experience, or in your words, it's not an experience, it's a perspective, is unaffected by the ongoing fluctuation and change in other aspects of my experience.
yes, it's definitely true because it's not me. It's not this human form, and not this human personality, the psyche with all its biological and psychological characteristics. So it is not touched. It cannot be touched by any of this, even though it touches and includes all of the human and physical aspects of who we are for this brief period of time that we have as far as our lifetime. But it itself is not affected I would say.
Well, has there been any time since over the last 12 years where you underwent something very intense, I don't know, illness or depression or something that really shook you that had some effect on that perspective?
It has effect upon the perspective, if you want to say, but it doesn't have any effect upon our true nature, my true nature. But of course, whenever you go through any physical, psychological, emotional trauma, it affects the way we perceive things. But it does not touch this ultimate seeing and noticing. If that makes if that is understandable.
Yes, it is
Okay.
understandable to me.
Okay, all
But
right.
I think it's important to say it because
Yes.
would you say that being aware or in touch with that perspective affects your experience, your other experiences, emotional, physical? Yeah.
Yes, I think it does. I think it's a gradual process. I think it's not like, it happens and all of a sudden nothing changes. It's a continual process of assimilating to this and in being affected by this and adjusting to this. So it does affect one's emotions. It does affect one's uh, physical being, but the emotions and the physical being do not affect that,
Mhm.
you know. So it
Right,
goes one way, but not the other way.
right.
It
Okay. I feel the presence of God or spirit in my body and through my senses.
Well, it all depends what you mean by God. That's a loaded term, and it means something different
I'm
to
happy to
every
go.
spiritual. Yeah, yeah,
I'm happy to go with whatever word you feel most comfortable with.
yes, yes. Um, when I think of the word God, I think of a theistic deity. I think of a personal being, and this ultimate reality is not a theistic deity or a personal being.
Mhm.
I think that gods and God, the Christian God, for example, which is my tradition, can be an expression of that. And I think that as far as our psyches, our human personalities, the only way that they can get a hold of this in any way and relate to this is through the personal dimension. So that is why the devotional path of worship can be very helpful, I think. And that's why I participate in Christian worship, even though I realize that the Christian God that is being described in these hymns and in these scriptures and in these prayers is not the ultimate reality. I see them as expressions of it.
So for you, it seems like even though you have a profound recognition of the ultimate reality on a say human personal level, there is still the ability to relate in a dual way to God is still fulfills a certain function, or there is still a need for that.
Yes, even though I'm very aware that it's just this human psyche that's doing that.
Yes,
And I'm not this human psyche, but I love this human psyche, and this human psyche loves the personal God, and so
yes,
it's a good thing.
yeah,
But there's also limits to that too. So the pastor or the preacher, if it's if he or she, mine happens to be a she, is too dualistic, then it's harder and harder. There's more cognitive dissonance going on, and it's harder to be part of such a community. But if there's an openness to it, they don't have to agree with me, but if there's an openness, then I can be there and I can worship.
So I mean, on a social level, it's an interesting predicament, right? Because you are part of a community where most or all people don't really share the same insight or perspective.
Correct. Correct. No, nobody does, basically.
Yes. Yes.
And when I've tried to preach it, because I was the pastor here, when this awakening happened, and I tried to preach this, and I wrote and I preached sermons about it, and I was not connecting at all because no one knew what I was talking about, and so I was basically worthless as a pastor because I wasn't able to communicate this. So I had to back up, and I had to do more things that they could connect with and bring in this other element so people can kind of see there's another dimension to this. And so I was trying to do that. So I did that for a few years before I retired. But but nowadays I don't even do much preaching because I'm not not able to compromise as much this message. And yet this message is not welcome in most churches and cannot be understood.
Yeah. Well, fortunately, we live in a more tolerant age because
Yes, yeah. I won't be burned at the stake or anything,
Yes.
but
Uh-huh.
which I'm grateful for.